Good evening, I'm Rich Skidmore. Over the years, American cities have been terrorized by a host of notorious serial killers, from the Hillside Strangler to Son of Sam to Jeffrey Dahmer. But one such killer has so far received only modest notoriety and to this day remains at large. His targets come from all walks of life and somehow seem to disappear without a trace, only to be found later, the victims of a grisly game involving torture and ultimately death. Each killing is trademarked by a puzzle piece carved directly from the victim's back. And yet, despite having a handful of suspects, police have been unable to come up with enough hard forensic evidence to make an arrest. Tonight, in a closer look at this case, we'll be piecing together Jigsaw. It began a little over a year ago when the people of this idyllic suburban town found themselves unwitting participants in the Jigsaw killer's first game.
Police have positively identified the body as 46-year-old Paul Stahlberg, who was reported missing more than a month ago. His body was discovered this morning by the property manager of this vacant building. Detectives here on scene say his death occurred about 3 weeks ago. Police are now asking anyone with information, please step forward.
But as the disturbing details of Mr. Stahlberg's death emerged, it soon became evident that police had on their hands anything but an ordinary homicide.
These were some of the most gruesome crime scenes we'd ever encountered. We found Mr. Stahlberg's body in a sort of makeshift cage, completely entangled in razor wire. It appeared that the victim attempted to climb through the wire to get to a door in the ceiling. The evidence suggested that the perpetrator had given Mr. Stahlberg an ultimatum: escape or die.
Investigators refused to release the specifics of Jigsaw's chilling ultimatum. But soon after our research into this case began, we received a tape from an anonymous source. Some viewers may find the contents of this tape disturbing.
Hello, Paul. You are a perfectly healthy, sane, middle-class male. Yet last month, you ran a straight razor across your wrist. Did you cut yourself because you truly wanted to die, or did you just want some attention? Tonight, you'll show me.
Stahlberg was your typical middle-class Joe. An accountant, been with the same firm for some 20-odd years, a couple kids, nice house, no known enemies.
Hoping this was an isolated incident and having no leads, investigators quietly shelved the case file. But with the discovery of the charred remains of Mark Rodriguez, a 30-year-old software analyst, the similarities convinced police that they could no longer deny the grim truth. There was a serial killer on the loose.
When we found what was left of Mr. Rodriguez, there were a number of key factors that made it apparent he was a victim of the same killer. Mostly, though, it was the elaborate setup and the puzzle piece that was cut out of his back. That's when we knew we were going to have our hands full.
The pattern was in place. A personalized message from the killer, a puzzle piece carved from the corpse, a hidden location where the killer could watch his victims fall prey to their own weakness. But then, 2 months later, a break in the case that police were not expecting. A survivor.
Amanda Young is the only known person to have survived one of Jigsaw's games. She walked away from the scene with minor injuries, but emotionally I can only imagine the sort of impact this will have on her long term. To date, we've come across 4 crime scenes and left with virtually no forensic evidence. Not a fingerprint, not even a hair.
Although police had no forensic evidence, they did manage to piece together a path to a possible suspect. When we return, we'll take a closer look at one of the most bizarre twists in this case, the disappearance of 4 seemingly unrelated individuals.
If someone was hunting everyone around you, fight like hell. High tension. Rated R. In theaters everywhere, June 10th.
Tráilers, visita mi canal.
A doctor, an orderly, a freelance photographer, a former police detective. 4 individuals with ties to the Jigsaw case who had one more thing in common. On a chilly night 1 year ago, each mysteriously vanished.
Lawrence Gordon is one of the most successful oncologists in the entire county, probably the whole state. He's a dedicated worker. He probably spent more time here than he did at home.
But Lawrence Gordon had secrets. Secrets that began to unfold during the home invasion involving his wife and 8-year-old daughter.
911, what's your emergency?
Oh, God, you've got to help us. There's gunshots coming from the house.
Sorry, ma'am, did you say gunshots?
Yes, there's gunshots.
Ma'am, I need to get the address,
There's
please.
another one. They just...
Okay, I
they're
need you to stay calm, and I need to get the address, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's, 4211 North Crescent Avenue. It's the Gordons. You've got to send
Okay,
somebody
good.
immediately.
I will send someone immediately. Can you tell me, do you see anyone around the house, please?
No, I can't really see anything. It's so dark, and wait, a truck just pulled up.
Okay, ma'am, do you recognize the truck?
No, I can't see it. I can't really tell what's...
Do you see how many people are in the truck?
I can't tell if there's anybody in the truck.
Hello, ma'am?
It's a truck.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Are you there? Hello,
Oh,
ma'am?
my God, they're going off.
Okay,
again.
ma'am,
Oh,
I can
God,
hear you.
oh,
Now,
God.
can you just stay where you are? I have a deputy on his way.
Please. Oh, they're coming out of the house. They're running.
Who's running, ma'am? Can you tell me?
Allison and Diana.
Just slow down.
My neighbors. They're going to the house next door.
Do they appear unharmed?
Well, no, I can't really tell. It's so dark.
I understand, ma'am.
There's 2 men now that are leaving. They're running.
Can you see the men?
Trees and
2 men fleeing the scene. Now, Allison Gordon reported that one of these men tied up her and her daughter and held them at gunpoint for more than 18 hours. Mrs. Gordon declined our requests for an interview, but we did manage to speak with some of her relatives about what happened that night, including the last hour when the phone calls began.
Well, Allie said that the intruder held the cell phone up to both her and Diana's ears and made them talk to Larry.
And what did he say?
That he had no idea where he was and he was being held captive.
But was Dr. Gordon a victim or a player? Unbeknownst to his family and friends, months before his disappearance, Dr. Gordon was hardly considered one of Jigsaw's prey. In fact, law enforcement considered him a prime suspect.
You're aware that Dr. Gordon was actually a suspect in the Jigsaw murders?
Yes.
But you believe that he was in fact kidnapped that night and had nothing to do with the crimes?
He wouldn't do that to Diana. He wouldn't just let some guy hold a gun to her head and sit there and do nothing while his daughter's crying. He wouldn't do it.
Investigators were not able to trace the origin of the phone calls made that night, but a cell phone recovered at the Gordon residence led police to this man, Zepp Hindle, an orderly who worked at the same hospital as Dr. Gordon.
Do you actually believe that Zepp Hindle is the Jigsaw killer?
Absolutely, there's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
But not everyone was convinced. In fact, the second man who fled from the scene was later identified as David Tapp. Tapp was the former lead investigator on the Jigsaw case and firmly believed that Lawrence Gordon was their man.
When we commenced our search of Tapp's apartment, we discovered that he had continued his investigation of the case on his own time.
Officials had in fact discharged Tapp after he recovered from injuries he sustained in a bungled raid on Jigsaw's home base, a raid that also resulted in the death of Tapp's partner, 28-year-old Stephen Singh. A well-placed source in the police department tells us that with no key suspects, ultimately, Lawrence Gordon became Tapp's obsession.
There were piles and piles of pictures, documents, notes, all of them relating to Dr. Gordon. And we found diaries as well, all the speculations that Tapp had made about how Gordon had committed each of the crimes, each of the murders.
Tapp had compiled an extensive dossier on Gordon, tracking his every move and speculating on his guilt. One such entry he made, quote, Dr. Gordon is part of this whole game. I'm willing to bet my life on it. With Tapp's sudden disappearance, police were able to use that dossier, which, along with email records, led them to a third suspect, a freelance photographer, referred to as Adam.
When we went to the suspect's home, we had found several photographs of Dr. Lawrence Gordon taken just prior to his alleged abduction. And we had also found the puppet that the Jigsaw had used.
So why, with all of these leads, has the trail run cold? How is it that 3 suspects and a former police detective should all disappear on the same night without a trace? Why has this investigation come to a grinding halt?
Man, look, the police ain't doing their job, man. They're going around here harassing all these innocent people and stuff, you know, over some petty shit, trying to make themselves look good and all that bull. Hey, to tell you the truth, I want to know why they can't catch one psycho crazy killer. What's up with that?
I can assure you, and the public, that this department is doing everything in its power to ensure that the guilty person or persons is apprehended.
Rallies were held at Diana Gordon's school to raise money for the victims' families and to urge law enforcement to step up their investigation.
We're trying to help the kids and the families of the victims the best we can. Most of them have been traumatized by the events, and we're trying to make sure they're safe. We don't know what's out there, but we are trying to comfort them that they have their families, they have their school, and life goes on.
Do you feel safe?
No, not at all.
Why do you think police are trying to keep this case away from the media?
I think they're just trying to brush it under the rug and wish it away.
These cops, they don't have a suspect, and they're just looking for someone, anyone, so that they can make it look like they're putting a case together. They probably planted the evidence on Lawrence to begin with.
Strong accusations. Are they unfounded? As if the stalled investigation weren't bad enough, police continue to be hounded by allegations of improprieties and corruption.
You got allegations of brutality against suspects. What brutality? Let me tell you something. What brutality? What brutality? Huh? What brutality? What? Where's my cigarette?
Many living in this community assert that actions like those of Detective Eric Matthews are part of what's hindering this case. Matthews has been suspended for excessive use of force and implicated in charges of evidence tampering.
Look, people like Matthews know the street. We deal with the dregs of society, and sometimes you need stronger methods to apprehend the bad guy.
I know Lawrence didn't do it. He's innocent, and neither of us are going to be able to sleep until the person who did do it is behind bars.
As this investigation continues to drift, concerned residents are faced with perplexing questions about this unsolved puzzle. Are the 4 people missing victims themselves, or perhaps participants in some sick game? Will the investigation kick back into gear? And most importantly, who is this sadistic killer preying on the morally weak? And who will his next victim be? As the story unfolds, we will continue to bring you up-to-date accounts of the crimes, and with any hope, a resolution to the horrific events perpetrated by the killer known as Jigsaw. I'm Rich Skidmore. Until next time, so long.